In this section, we will have a look at improving our app with components. We will start by looking at how to respond to events to make our components interactive, and then we will have a look at nesting of components, and lastly, we will have a look at component hooks, which provide an API at different stages in the life cycle of a component. So let us start with responding to events. In this video, we will set up an input spinner-like mechanism using components, and then we will define responses to events in our components. The first thing we will do is generate a component called value-incrementor, and inside this component template, let us display an icon of a plus sign to indicate that this component will be used for incrementing values. Then let us open the component.js file and change the tag name to a button and define a couple of class names that would be btn and btn link provided by Bootstrap. And then we can define a key press function which would call this dot increment property with the value that is passed to it. And then lastly, we can include this component in our cart.hbs template after our item.quantity and set the value to item.quantity. Now when we visit our application and add items to the cart, if we use the plus component and we press a key on it, we see that the quantity is increased accordingly. So let us make a similar component to decrement the value as well on the other side of the item.quantity. So we would generate a component called value-decrementer. Much like our value.incrementer template, we want to add a minus icon, and then in our value-decrementer component.js file, the functionality would be very similar, except that instead of calling increment property, we would be calling decrement property. And then we need to add the decrementer component to our cart.hbs template. Let us also wrap our item.quantity in a span of class btn link. And now when we load our application and add items to the cart, we can see that both the increment and the decrement components work as expected. At this stage, let us also complete the checkout functionality by adding a checkout button here. And before we do that, let us create an order model. So we will generate a model order, and for the sake of this example, let us add a single attribute called name, which would be of type string. Let us also generate another model called order item, which would have a relationship with order, product. It would also display the product name, the amount, which would be of type number, and quantity, which would again be of type number. In our order model, let us also define the relationship between order and order items. And then in our cart template, if we have shopping cart items present, we would want to display the checkout button. So let us add a condition. If the shopping cart items are present, we would display an input and a button on which we would define a checkout action, and then let us open the corresponding controller, that is cart.js, and define the checkout action. And to keep things a bit simpler, let us fetch our shopping cart service and call a checkout action and pass in the customer name as a parameter. And then we can define this checkout method on our shopping cart service. In the checkout method, we want to fetch an instance of the store and call the create record method on it to create a new order, passing in the name of the customer as a parameter, then calling the save method on it, and then on save we want to create the order items. So once again we would make a call to the store and the create record method on it and ask it to create order item, passing in the relationship between order and product. The relationship between the product can be derived from the cart items. So we would have to loop through the cart items. So we could do something like this: .get cart.items and call the for each method on it. Now the relationship between the product and the item would be item.get product, and then we can pass in the name, amount and quantity. The name would be once again item.get product.name. The amount would be item.get product.price, and quantity would be item.get quantity. Then we need to call the save method on this as well. Once the entire order has been created, we can get the cart items and invoke the destroy record method on it to delete the items from our data store. We will also return the value of this call as well as return the value of our create record method back to our caller function, that is our cart controller, so that we can do something like transitioning to a different route on successful checkout. And we also need to create this new route. So let us generate a route orders. In our orders route, we will define the model of the route to be all the order records from the store. In the order.hbs template, we would have something very similar to our shopping cart. We would display the order ID and the name of the customer, and in the body of the table we would display each of the order items, which would be item.name, item.amount and item.quantity. quantity. Lastly, let us also add the relevant routes to our config.js file, which would be this.get orders for our orders route, and a post request to be able to create orders, as well as a post request to be able to create order items. Now when we load our application and we add items to the cart, we can check out and we can see that our orders are listed. If I try to place more orders, all my orders are listed as expected. Thus we have seen how to respond to events, and we have completed our checkout functionality.